I wonder, am I the only person that thinks religion is causing more problems than it solves? It seems to me that all of this hatred and all of this killing in the name of a good God, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. The descendants of Israel chose Barbaras. I wonder, am I the only person that thinks religion is causing more problems than it solves right now? And I think that also in the past it has caused, at some times in its development, it has caused more problems than it solves. Am I wrong? I mean, because when I look around right now, at least, all I hear about is, I hear about the Muslims, who are all spiritual descendants, at least, of Muhammad. And these guys are killing each other over which God they believe in. They hate each other because they feel that the other hates their God, I guess. I don't know. We are all descendants of their how would I say it? Mythological parents. We are all descendants of that Adam and that Eve. All the Muslims, all the Christians, all the Jews are descendants of that mythological Adam and Eve, put it that way. But it seems to me that all of this hatred and all of this killing in the name of a good God, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Somebody help me make sense of it. Why would a good God want them over there for the last 70 years killing one another? I don't get it. So anyway, back to my original premise. When given the choice in the biblical story between Barbaras and Jesus, the descendants of Israel chose Barbaras. Now, the one guy was only saying, don't believe everything you hear. Now, that's a dangerous statement. Don't believe everything you hear. For this reason, Jesus was brutally murdered and set as an example of what you should not do under the, what were they called, Sadducees and something else, some kind of other seeds. Under these priests, they killed the man. They murdered him. They had him murdered, and they encouraged, according to the story at least, and they encouraged their people to take a murderous, I think that's even where the word barbarism, what we call it, barbarism, barbaras, a barbarian. They chose a barbarian over a man just asking the question, should I believe everything you say? And so these were the upper class, and Jesus was a carpenter. The guy worked with his hands. And he dared to question their authority. He dared to ask people to question whether or not they had a more direct line. These Sadducees and whatever the other one's called. Sadducees, Sadducees, I don't know. What these two groups of priests, probably like bishops and cardinals, I don't know. They had their, obviously they had a organizational structure. And they murdered, in my opinion, a good man who had the blind audacity to question what he saw and what he was hearing. To ask himself the question, how can they know the words of God more clearly than I, when I have the same direct connection to God that they do? And for that question, we are all sons of God. For that question, he was put to death for telling you that you have a direct line to God. So my original question, is there more good than evil? Okay, people can say something good came out of it. Now we can sit here and talk about Jesus and his life and what he said and what he meant and what he did. We can talk about all of that. So out of his murder, his brutal assassination, public assassination at the hand of the Sadducees, or whatever the other one's called, we have Christianity. Okay? But now, Christianity has its faults. It did not ban slavery, one of the atrocities. One man's right to own another man. One man's right to own his wife. So yeah, we have our atrocities in the religion I was brought up in too. So we didn't escape. We didn't escape our insanity either. But that's not my point. My point is that the same principles that guide our religions, at their base, they're good. But when you bring people into it who think they can tell you what God says, what God thinks, you should always be worried that maybe it's just what they think. You should always be worried. Now, there are people, I believe, there are people out there who are more in tune with the voice of God than others. But I think those people are few and far in between. I think Muhammad may have been one. I think that Jesus may have been one. I think that Buddha may have been one. I think that there are very few people, but I think that there have been people who are just so tapped into that energy, that light source within, that they have a better insight than others. But I don't trust everybody who thinks they can tell me what God says. I know that I have a direct connection to the source of all things. I know that you have a direct connection to the source of all things.